When a poor dog needed help, he visited the nearest veterinary clinic. After reaching the building's doors, everyone was shocked by what had happened to the dog. There is a global crisis that only seems to be getting worse over time. As of the 21st century, it is estimated that there are over 200 million dogs around the world that live without a home. Even though many people can sympathize with stray animals, taking care of one requires a lot of effort, time, and mental strength. Not long ago, there was a lonely dog living on the streets of Ceará, a small state situated on the coastline of Brazil. The dog had been abandoned at birth and had never belonged to a family before. Because of this, it had learned to depend on itself and rarely asked for help. However, this changed once the canine started to feel pain all the time. As the dog walked across the pavement, its paw started to hurt. At first, the animal simply ignored it, believing that it would soon pass. But then, days went by and the pain wouldn't go away. No one paid this dog any mind, even though it was clearly in a poor condition. One day, the animal pushed itself to get as close as possible to a large building in the center of town. It turned out that this building was a veterinary clinic. The dog was aware of this but had never before approached the place. Even though no one had come out to greet the dog, the animal still felt safer being beside the clinic rather than far from it. And so, the stray curled into itself, nestled against the clinic's wall, and fell asleep. During the evening and the following day, an outdoor camera recorded the dog's movements. For safety precautions, the clinic had several security cameras installed, both inside and outside the building. Although the cameras were intended to capture criminal or suspicious activity, one of the vets at the clinic spotted the dog outside and began watching it. The woman, whose name was Daisy Ferreira da Silva, was curious as to why this dog chose to stay outside of the clinic. She wondered if the dog was in need of help. In the morning, Daisy's questions were answered. When the dog woke up, it struggled to push itself up. Even through the blurry video recording, the vet could see that one of the dog's legs wasn't working properly. There may be several reasons why this was the case, but the only way she would be able to confirm her suspicions was if she could examine the dog. Much to her surprise, the animal mustered as much strength as it could in order to bring itself to the clinic's doors. The door was open, and the street dog interpreted it as an invitation. This sick dog went into a vet clinic to ask for help, hoping that it wouldn't be turned away. The stray must have been rejected its whole life, but this time it hoped that things would be different. As the canine entered the building, all eyes turned towards it. The animal had only put a single foot through the door, but it was enough to catch everyone's attention and piqued curiosity. Even a few people outside watched the dog, curious as to what it was doing. It paused for a moment, unsure about its next step. For a moment, the dog turned its head around, tempted to run back to the streets, away from all the attention. But then it swallowed its pride and took a few more steps through the door towards Daisy and the nurses. Daisy sat by the reception desk waiting for the dog to get closer. To the dog's left was a row of unoccupied seats which made up the waiting area, with the exception of one seat where a woman protectively cradled her pet. The small dog in the woman's arms made no move to communicate with the stray, but the bigger dog was in too much pain to focus on anything else around it. The street dog tried its best to get closer to the reception desk, but the throbbing sensation coming from its paw was too much for it to handle. As soon as the dog reached the wall, it collapsed, unable to support itself any longer. At this point, Daisy couldn't stand by anymore and watch the dog suffer. She stood up from her seat at the reception and hurried over to the animal. Daisy lowered herself so that she was eye level to the whimpering dog. One of her hands reached out to pet its matted fur. Her touch was gentle and comforting, which is precisely what the canine needed. Her trained eyes scanned the stray's body, assessing its injury and any other potential problems. The vet turned to speak to the nurse closest to her, giving out instructions on how he was going to examine and care for the dog. The nurse listened to Daisy and started walking towards the office. Daisy pointed towards the nurse, directing the dog to follow him. The canine seemed hesitant at first. It remained seated for a moment before receiving further encouragement. However, when the dog started walking towards the office, Daisy quickly stopped it, noticing that there was a problem with the animal's rear leg. Because she had several years of treating both pets and stray dogs, Daisy was confident in her ability to assess any hidden illnesses. It turned out that the dog had a bigger problem than just a sore paw. What happened next will surprise you. The vet followed her nurse and the stray into her office, where she wasted no time in trying to figure out what the matter was. Swiftly, Daisy sanitized her hands before checking every part of the dog's body. Even though she had only just met the dog, she felt very protective over it. While Daisy examined the male dog, she decided to give him a name: Quindam. Although Quindam struggled to keep his head upright, he responded positively to the name. The animal placed a lot of trust in the vet, and that meant a lot to her. Eventually, Daisy came up with a diagnosis, and it was a lot more serious than an injured paw. The truth was that Quindam had developed a cancerous tumor. After carrying out the first chemotherapy session, Daisy was delighted to see Quindam's body respond positively. Daisy took on the responsibility of caring for the dog in her free time. In fact, she offered shelter to Quindam, allowing him to rest at her house. The vet and the dog developed a routine of sleeping close to each other at night and walking to the clinic during the day. Daisy wanted to keep a close eye on her furry friend throughout his journey to recovering. When Daisy was recently interviewed about Quindam's new condition, she was pleased to talk about his improvement. There's no longer any bleeding, and he does not seem to be in pain. I'm happy to tell you that despite the hardships that Quindam has faced in his life, his story has a happy ending. Daisy was diligent in giving the dog regular sessions and supported him emotionally every step of the way. After sharing the story online, many people were touched by Quindam's bravery and started crowdfunding for his treatment. Thanks to the financial support from all these people, the dog made a full recovery and is now feeling better than ever before. Did you expect this to happen? It's an amazing feat, to say the least. Among the online supporters, there were many local residents who had heard about Quindam's story. A man who lived a few miles away from the clinic became interested in adopting Quindam. He wasn't the only one who seemed happy to take the dog into their home. Since his story went public, many people went out of their way to reach out and contact Daisy. While the vet was pleased by the outpouring of love and positive reaction, she still prioritized Quindam's safety and well-being above all else. When the Brazilian man called Daisy, he suggested sending a person to pick up the dog for him. Daisy politely rejected the request, encouraging the man to come in for an interview first. She wanted to ensure that Quindam was being adopted by the best possible candidate and refused to settle for less. Daisy had become Quindam's hero, and the dog would be forever grateful to the woman who saved his life. What did you think about the story? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so comment below and join our community by subscribing. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content just like this, give this video a like and share it with your friends. I hope to see you again soon.